Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Russell Rucker. I'm the author of Textualism and Originalism in Our Constitutional Republic, and there's a poster behind me depicting that. I'm also the author of Our Founders in Their Words and Why They Matter, and the poster for that is off to my left here. My books are essentially about the Constitution and about our founding period. I've studied for many years on this period, and that is my period of study, just so you understand where I'm coming from here. I've served in government, and I've served in a lot of organizations. I do understand a lot how things should work. I'd like to thank Reader's Magnet for this opportunity to be on the Festival of Storytellers and explain a lot about what's actually in my book. My goal with these two books is they're supposed to be kind of a mate to each other to make you understand our Constitution, our founding, and the rights that we do have. This is an election year, and in an election year, we generally have two major parties competing for votes to determine who will be the president, who's going to be the vice president, senators, House members, and all those things all the way down ballot. And there are quite a few parties, like you have the Constitution Party, the Green Party. You even had a party called the No Labels. But our two major parties, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, go back a long ways, and that's why people talk about it being a two-party system. Now, the Democrat Party first got a president who was a plantation owner. His name is Andrew Jackson. I believe he was elected somewhere in the 1840s. And the Republican Party can trace back to 1854 with the Whigs disbanding, some disgruntled Democrats, and the Free Soilers. They're primarily an anti-slave party at the time. The Jackson and the Democrat Party can trace all the way back to Jefferson. This is a bust of Jefferson, and we're going to be talking about him quite a bit for the next couple of days. Washington is on the other side of the barrel. Hamilton, who we'll be talking to, is in my second panel in the lower right corner, or my lower right corner, you'll see Hamilton seating in the painting of the signing of the convention, just so you have an idea of what these people are supposed to look like, or at least how they were depicted to look. So the Republican Party chose their name from the party of Jefferson. And that's why it's referred to as the Grand Old Party. It's a harken back to the old party of Jefferson, even though the Democrats can show a direct link to Jefferson. So it gives you an idea of the party system. And we've had a lot of parties over the years, like the Know Nothing or the American Party, which is the mid 1800s. You've got the Socialist Party was the most popular party in the 20th century. It held the most seats in the very early days of the 20th century. And so it is actually was the most successful third party. Today, it's probably the Libertarians. But to go back all the way back to when there was no party, there are two periods of time. There's the era of good feelings, which runs from about 1820 to 1840, where really the old Republican Party had pretty much destroyed the Federalist Party to the point that they really didn't exist anymore, and they weren't even running presidential nominees. And that's the last period of time where we weren't essentially at war with one another. You have two major parties, and they're fighting pretty hard against each other, and it is kind of like a war of a contrition to win the election. The other period of time is in Washington's cabinet. See, and that's what I'm going to talk about today is Washington's cabinet. You see, initially, Washington, he might have agreed a lot with the Federalists, but he agreed with a lot of the anti-Federalists too. I mean, he was not a partisan president. And he's the only president that was not of a partisan nature. But he set up his cabinet, and he chose men from different regions of the country. What he was trying to do was he was trying to bind the country together by choosing people from different areas. For instance, the Secretary of State was Thomas Jefferson. He's from Virginia. He's a plantation owner, is a major, very wealthy man. The Secretary of the Treasury was Alexander Hamilton. He wanted to choose Robert Morris. Robert Morris had been the financier of the Revolution, but he turned him down and he suggested Alexander Hamilton for the position. And so he nominated him. And for Secretary of War, he chose Henry Knox. The other cabinet member of Washington's was an attorney general, and he chose Edmund Randolph. Now, the attorney general position comes from the judicial law that was passed. The other group of the other cabinet positions come from right out of the Constitution, really. The authority for the creation of them for the cabinet comes from Article 2, Section 2, where it discusses the principal officers that he may require in writing specific duties and what they're doing from the principal officers. And that's where the idea of the cabinet appointees come from constitutionally. Although there was discussion in all the different plans in the Constitutional Convention, all discuss some kind of cabinet or some kind of group of men to help advise the president. And that's where you really get the cabinet from. By 1795, there were a lot of replacements, but the primary thing here is there was a major feud inside his cabinet. John Adams never attended any of the cabinet meetings as he was the vice president at the time. But when you look at the cabinet and expanded farther than they originally thought, some of the cabinet appointments, like today, are not authorized by the Constitution. So it could be argued that some of the departments are created unconstitutionally or maybe extra constitutionally, such as the Departments of Education and Energy. But when you get to things like the Department of War, which today would be the Department of Defense or Department of Commerce, or many of these other departments are listed and mentioned constitutionally in the Constitution. They discuss the right of defense. They discuss commerce, things of this nature. Now, what Hamilton was trying to achieve was he was trying to, he had a whole plan of creating a larger government than what we had under the Articles of Confederation. So he wanted a national bank. He wanted a national road. The national bank was to hold money that would be the federal government's money. Hamilton wanted a lot of economic policies. He wanted to pay off the combined debt of the Confederation and the state's debt. And the reason he wanted to do this was to strengthen our dollar and make the dollar worth more. If we reneged on our debts, then nobody might trust us later. So he wanted to finance this by the sale of security bonds. And he wanted this new charter, a new financial charter for the Bank of the United States. And he wanted this modeled after the Bank of England. He wanted to change from an agricultural country to a mercantile country. And this is a really important difference, considering, especially the South was heavily agricultural. They were, producing tobacco, cotton, wheat, and there was a lot of, agriculture going on. And up in the Northeast, you had more of an industrial economy. He wanted subsidies. He wanted protective tariffs, and it was really controversial because he wanted to switch the entire economy to manufacturing. And when you get away from the agriculture, it was really almost a challenge to Jefferson and his followers. And the whole idea of switching the system was a problem. Jefferson did not like what the Federalists were doing. He was opposed to the Federalists, vehemently opposed. He thought the Federalists were trying to create a monarchy. And the Federalists really thought that Jefferson and his followers were guilty of treason. And so there really was no way to get around this large feud that they had going on. So they were battling with each other inside Washington's cabinet. This is really the problem that Washington had. And one of the reasons he warned against political parties in his farewell address. But eventually, Jefferson resigned from the cabinet, and Randolph replaced him. Jefferson had been an important diplomat. He had written the Declaration of Independence. He later became the third president of the United States. He was an important man in the country. He lived in Western Virginia in a plantation called Monticello. The third, fourth, and fifth presidents were very close living quarters to one another. Monroe's ash lawn could actually be seen from Monticello on a clear day. And Jefferson even sent his planners over there to help him with planting trees and stuff, and really developing the property. And not far off from there, you had Madison's home, which is Montpelier. Now, he's the father of the Constitution, and these three men were the third, fourth, and fifth presidents of our country. So they were important men. Inside the cabinet, though, there was a tremendous feud going on, and Jefferson even got a congressman. His name is William Giles, and he got him to complain to Congress and level baseless attacks, accusing him of malfeasance in office, misappropriation of funds, raising funds for the Bank of Europe, failure to discharge his duties of office. But these things were investigated, and there really was nothing to them. But it didn't stop Jefferson from trying to continue to dig up dirt on Hamilton, and eventually culminating in such a distrust of Jefferson that he commented to Rufus King, who was really the last Federalist presidential candidate. That's his big claim to fame. But he was in Congress, and he complained to him that he didn't think this was ever going to end. And it just kept going on and on. But finally, Jefferson did resign. He resigned from the cabinet, and there was some level of peace, although in the next election, after Washington stepped down, he ran for president, and it was between him and Aaron Burr. Aaron Burr had tied in the House, had tied in the Electoral College, and it went to the House, went through repeated votes. And I don't want to get too much into that election, because we'll be talking about that next week. We're doing a whole show on that election. But there was a tie, and Aaron Burr was pretty darn mad when he didn't get the presidency, especially when Jefferson ignored him the entire time. And of course, Aaron Burr did eventually get into a duel with Hamilton, and shot Hamilton and killed him over in Weehawken, New Jersey, where they had a big dueling ground. So there was really a vicious kind of attitude inside Washington's cabinet. And all Washington was trying to do was get some peace, get the country set up the best way he could, and go through what was necessary. But I think really this is one of the big reasons why Washington didn't want to serve past 2 terms, and why he talked about the danger of party, and the danger of parties only wanting to support their own party and not wanting to discuss, not wanting to serve the country, but to party. I just want to point out what we're dealing with here. This is 1783, and I have a globe here which is painted to 1783, and this blue section here is the United States. And this map, you have New Spain over here, and you have the Canadian provinces up above in Canada. And this globe is to the 1783, the Treaty of Paris. And so that's the country we had, and that's the country that Washington had to deal with um, when he began his cabinet. So I just thought that that would be interesting for you to see, and exactly where we were at the time of Washington's administration. Washington set up the judiciary. We did a whole a show on him 2 days ago, and there was a lot of things that Washington was trying to set up. But once Jefferson actually got in power, he even disbanded some courts, and there were some impeachment of judges. In the letters between Adams and Jefferson, his wife's even complaining about Jefferson's attitude towards towards the Federalists that he had appointed, and the disappointment they had, and which is one of the reasons there's a great vacancy of letters written between the two men for a period of time. They had started as friends, and later they just couldn't even get along anymore. And this is just, the vendetta that goes on, and the war between these parties, and the war between political parties in this country and two main parties never really ended. And so it's gone on for basically, other than the era of good feelings, it's gone on for a couple hundred years and better. I do want to go get to some of these questions, and I do appreciate any questions that you're willing to give me. And Betty asked, what do you hope readers will gain from your book? I hope they gain some real knowledge. I hope they gain understanding of our Constitution, and what we're supposed to do. What the rights that we're supposed to have, and how the country's supposed to work. That's really I want people to just understand. And the reason I went and began to write really is because of the misunderstanding among people that I felt, anyway, should really know what's in the Constitution. And they were basically, for partisan reasons, trying to say things were that weren't. And that was really the crux of it. It's the same kind of thing when you get to Washington's cabinet and they're fighting amongst ourselves. We need to unify as a country and work for the good of the country, not for the good of party. And I mean, that's really the problem we have today. I hope that people get a little historical context out of the books, so they understand why things were done the way they were. And it's an originalist way of looking at it. We need to people need to understand why things are the way they are, and that they are the way they are. So, for instance, like your Third Amendment, it discusses the quartering and the anti-quartering amendment, and there's no other way to look at that other than through an historical lens. Otherwise, we don't know why it is the way it is. And I guess, Betty, that's what I really want people to understand. Tracy says, how do you approach the task of providing a strict interpretation based on the founder's vision, considering the diversity of opinion during the convention? Well, that's really interesting, okay? Because there was a diversity of opinion, but some of those people weren't there at the end. So you had 55 delegates in the Constitutional Convention. 40 of them signed it. So 40 of them agreed in the end. They compromised in a lot of different ways. Like, for instance, the Senate and the House separation was a great compromise. That's what it's called, the Great Compromise. Taking both the House by representation and the Senate by state. So that was a great compromise. So when you look at the final document and what they achieved, They may not have agreed when they all got together on May 15th, but by mid-September, they were all in agreement. All those that left anyway. I mean, those that were left anyway. I mean, you did have like two of New York's delegates left. They weren't happy with the direction that was going on. There were some that thought that they had overextended their authority because the reason for the call of the convention to begin with was to approve on the Articles of Confederation. But I understand what you're saying. You're basically stating that there were differences of opinion, and how do you find the originalist um, understanding of it? Well, one place is the Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers were written trying to convince New York to sign on to the Constitution. So we have documented records going back and forth between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalist Papers to help us explain what exactly it means and why it is what it is. So it's not as divided as you may think it is. Most of these people all agreed in the end. 40 of them signed. Of those left in the convention hall in September, that means there were 3 that refused to sign. 3 out of those that were left. One gentleman did not sign because he thought it would create a civil war in the state because of the people that wanted a democracy versus those that wanted a republic. The compromises and the inability for some men to compromise is another reason why there was some difference of opinion. But generally speaking, they all agreed on what the final document was. But when you get into the last day, especially the last day or 2 of the convention, they're all standing up talking. This would not be exactly what I wanted, but considering the diverse opinions, this was the best we could do. And I think that's an important statement. Ben Franklin made that kind of statement, and so did many of the others that were there. And the one thing that people like to bring up is Jefferson and his opposition to some of what was in there. But he wasn't even at the convention. He was in Europe at the time on diplomatic duties. So you have these people that were sent to the convention. They pretty much all agreed. So I guess that's the best I can tell you on that, Tracy. Brenda, how do you believe understanding the original language of the Constitution contributes a better comprehension of the government we're promised and the Republic itself? Well, the original language is very important. I look to 2 sources for original language. I look to Johnson's dictionary that was published in 1755 and Noah Webster's dictionary that was published and searchable online from 1822. These 2 dictionaries help us to determine what exactly the words mean, because over time, language can change and words can change. But it's important to understand original language and original interpretation so that we understand what they were actually discussing. For instance, if you're looking at a specific amendment, you can look at the arguments in the Congress when that amendment was submitted. What were they trying to achieve? What were they trying to accomplish? And I think that helps us better understand and better comprehend the government that we were promised. And in a lot of cases, those promises have fell somewhat short because our federal government does not want to follow a constitution that restricts the federal government. And that's kind of what our Constitution actually does on a number of levels. I hope that helps you a little better. And I see you also are asking me what motivated me to write and explain the Constitution. And I think the primary reason is editorial people that have degrees in colleges, professors writing, stating things that are in there that aren't. I also would hear about, from a talk show host, for instance, saying things that just weren't in there, and you got a right to do this and that, and it just isn't the way it is. And I guess I was trying real hard to correct the record and make people better understand the kind of document we're supposed to have. Now, I'm basically out of time here. I need to wrap up. I want you to know you can get my book on my website, russelljrucker.com. You can get it through Amazon. You can get it through Barnes & Noble. The second edition of Textualism is coming out, and that has some additional language in it. And I am taking pre-orders on my website now for it, and it should be up on Amazon any day. I do have a YouTube channel where I drop a video every week to help discuss either some segment of the Constitution, an amendment, or an historical context. And I also want to bring up my Facebook discussion group, Friends of Textualism and Originalism. There are a lot of people concerned about constitutional opinion, and we discuss it there. And it's a chance to discuss things with me personally. I do respond and look at things there. And I really want you to understand our Constitution, our rights, and as Betty said, the government we're supposed to have. This is my book, Our Founders and Their Words and Why They Matter. And Textualism and Originalism helps to define each section. I go through the Constitution paragraph by paragraph, explaining it in an originalist view of it, a textualist and originalist view. So you're reading the text, and I'm looking at it as the historical aspect to help define it. I'd like to thank you for your time today. I really enjoy being here at Festival of Storytellers, and I enjoy being one of Reader's Magnet's authors. So thank you very much, and have a good day. And tomorrow we're going to get into the Continental Congress and the Declaration of Independence. So I hope you come back and join me. I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.